All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Vin, and organizers for the Australia-ASEAN Academics Forum. Really happy for myself and Ms. Miriam Woon from Singapore Institute of Technology to join everyone. So we've got this little presentation put together, and it's entitled Blending Learning Spaces and Thinking Skills. It's a critical design thinking in a design innovation university-wide module.
Thank you. That's excellent, Nadya. And before we start, perhaps I will do an acknowledgement of country and we'll introduce you. So, and then you can start your presentation. You got
all right. My apologies. Thank you.
And beautiful slide there ready to go. So congratulations. Now, today we are meeting on the lands of the Palawa people of the Latruwita Nation. We pay respect to the traditional owners, to other past, present, and emerging of the land on which all the University of Tasmania campuses stand. On behalf of the University of Tasmania, we acknowledge all countries participating in this forum and also acknowledge their elders and ancestors and their legacies to us. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where our partners and participants live and work across Australia and Southeast Asia. And today we had the pleasure to welcome Nadya from Singapore, and she will be presenting on a very interesting topic. And you can, she provided a fascinating profile, and it's already included in the booklet for the program, and I'm sure you have read it, but please allow me to introduce her briefly. So Nadya is an assistant professor in the Business Communication and Design cluster at the Singapore Institute of Technology. She leads a faculty community of practice for critical design thinking in the disciplines. She co-developed and teaches university-wide critical design thinking in design innovation for undergraduates in various disciplines. And she also facilitates professional learning workshops for local and international institutions on pedagogical approaches to improve teaching and learning practices. So welcome, Nadya. Now over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vin. Really happy to join everyone. So I thought I'll start with this because personally, I've always been interested in looking at what scholars are talking about when it comes to foresight practice. All that we do in our work as academics and researchers at the higher education, we always look to see what the future holds for us. So the radical reform, this is WGSN future drivers, they've identified this driver as something that is key for businesses, including universities, because it is a higher education industry that will shape the landscape of the future. So in higher education, scholars have said that this radical reform is going to be involving a rethinking for the purpose of education. And that driver also states that perhaps we all need to be looking into ways for our students to learn in a way that is very personalized to them. And the developing of skills and dispositions will be key from now as we prepare our graduates for the future. What does this mean, for all of us in varied fields and disciplines? For myself, I'm involved with some colleagues to teach students how to internalize transferable skills like critical thinking and design thinking. So with a driver such as this, personalization of learning, developing core skills and dispositions, how can we think about this when we rethink and redesign our curriculum? So just a context, the design innovation module that we blend critical thinking and design thinking is a university-wide module. That means it's compulsory, it's mandatory. Every student, no matter their discipline, will have to take this module. And these are some of the university-wide modules. They start with a foundational academic writing module that is quite common for decades. Universities have been doing that, critical thinking and communicating. And then we have the UDE, Introduction to Design Innovation, which myself and my colleagues are co-developing. And then there's also the social innovation module where students really look at vulnerable members of the or groups of the community and think of solutions for complex problems. And then they go to UDE 2, where it is a more intentionally interdisciplinary design innovation. Other than combining students from varied fields together, we look at how students can hone the skills and knowledge of their disciplines and what does that mean when they work collaboratively with others, because we all know real world problems are never really about being solved with one single expertise. Right, so in the module, we really take note of what, like the radical reform driver highlights, dispositions of the students. So the 5C disposition, the little diagram on the right there, we identify them as key. So as the students internalize the principles of design thinking, they learn the art of asking critical questions. At the same time, we highlight these dispositions, how important it is for them to develop curiosity and to have the confidence to define problem statements and to instill or to flex their intellectual muscles, including creative thinking, and then also hone the critical thinking skills and collaborate to solve problems. So it's a very intentional blend of the design thinking skills and critical thinking skills. We all know that in businesses, they look at desirability, viability, and feasibility of solutions. And the sweet spot in the middle there is the innovation, but we also get our students to apply critical thinking because the university has identified these key transferable skills, and we want the students to keep practicing and applying their skills all the time, not just in these university-wide modules, but in every module. Just a little joke, a student came up to me and said, I've done critical thinking module, Prof, why am I doing this again? Why am I seeing critical thinking again? And then I jokingly said to the student that you are meant to see it everywhere because it is a transferable skill, right? So the design of the module, we have these in mind because we know that it's not a one-off. It has to be designed in a way that it is for the long term, designing it for sustainability. So these are some of the considerations that I think I've talked about this in another conference, but it's very important to have a modular, flexible curriculum, maybe applying themes like sustainable developmental goals, right? Because design innovation, even though scholars say it is human-centered, but today, in this day and age, any solution has to pay attention to how it can preserve Earth's natural resources and not to be wasteful. And thus, instead of just thinking about it as a human-centered approach, perhaps we now need to think about it as a humanity-centered approach. How can our solutions be for the betterment of not just people and community and society, but also for the world in terms of our Earth, right? Oops. Right, so this is what we were blending with. We were blending critical thinking and design thinking. So at every step of the steps of design thinking, whether it's IDEOs or Stanford's, we looked at how critical thinking plays a part in that step. So for example, if design thinking is all about the disposition of having empathy, empathy is really where the students are taught to really understand the problem from the eyes or from the perspective of the users experiencing the problem. And when they do that, they are engaged in divergent thinking because they want to go wide and really think about what are the factors that is affecting this issue. How are the users? Who else are affected by it? So when they engage in divergent thinking, we tell them that, or rather we show it to them with modeling, that critical thinking is important. When you apply critical thinking, then you're able to fully engage in divergent thinking. And if not, empathy will not be possible if you do not ask good critical questions. So the mapping and the blending of those are made intentionally like this. Affectionately, the team calls it CTDT approach. And this is our conceptual framework. So the module interdisciplinary or introduction to design innovation has this conceptual framework that we put together. You can see those question tags. These are just some of it, but we do have maybe based these question tags on critical thinking scholars like Paul and Elder, 2018, where they recognize that there are elements of thought and intellectual standards to use when it comes to critical thinking. So we use these question starters as a way to model to our students how to ask good questions when it comes to engaging in design innovation methodology to solve problems, right? In the interest of time, I think I will breeze through some of these slides, but as we seek to blend these two thinking skills, we also know that it is a challenge to get through to all of our students. So in every academic year, we can expect to meet about 3,000 students who will have to read this module. So how do we get to all of them and not have an army of faculty to meet the students in physical face-to-face seminars or workshops? So naturally, in order to engage the students in active learning with hands-on, and we know design innovation is all about hands-on activities where they get to prototype their solutions. We know that we can't meet the students for class every single week. So the blending of the thinking skills is then experimented with a blending of learning spaces. So instead of a regular module where students meet every single week, our university-wide module design innovation meets the student only for a fraction of the time per trimester. So instead of every lesson for 12 weeks, we meet the students for only 6 weeks or even 5 weeks. And the rest of the time, the students will have to be engaged in online. They can go through online materials and they can engage with the online learning packages. And they will also have online learning activities to work on, right? And then the key, one of the key things that we're going to be talking about together with Miriam later at the end of the presentation is how do we link, how do we connect, right, the learning between the online space and the physical space. And this is, has always been a challenge because we don't want students to think about it as discrete learning, as disjointed. If students learn online and that's about it, and students come to class and they learn something and they talk about something and that is separate or disjointed from the online learning. So this is always a constant challenge for us when we design modules for blended learning environment. All right. In a past project, I did put together a word cloud and ask students, what is it that they don't like about blended learning? What is it that why would they opt for face-to-face? Many students will have the misconception that blended learning is boring. Blended learning is just readings, and that they can't get to clarify anything because the instructors are not there, and thus they would rather have face-to-face. But we realized that soon enough, we realized that these are actually possibly due to a poorly designed curriculum that allows students to feel almost negatively about learning that takes place outside of the class. Right, but interestingly, there will be a fraction of students who will claim that they do like blended learning. They do want that flexibility and that autonomy to learn on their own, self-directed learning at their own pace, and thus they would opt for blended learning. So at the core of it, when we get students into focus group discussions, we realize that the design of the module is very important. The conceptual framework of the module, what the module key concepts are, as well as the pedagogical framework that undergirds the module is very, very critical. Otherwise, it will just be just another module that just happens to meet face-to-face sometimes and online sometimes. That is what we don't want it to be. So in terms of considerations when it comes to designing this university-wide module that we can't afford to meet the students all the time, we have these 4 very simple ones. We know that the learning space, whether it is online or face-to-face, has to be active, right? In class, design class, yes, active learning is very easy and quite common, as in like all design studios. But what about the online learning spaces? How can we make learning space online active too? Right? How can we emphasize interactivity, right? Again, in class, it sounds like as if it's a no-brainer that in the classroom, physical lessons can be interactive, but we all know, as per what Sinclair and Kuhart, scholars of teacher taught once upon a time, said, it's always very teacher-led, instructor-led, and it's, teacher asks a question, it's the IRE, instructor asks a question, students reply, and then the teacher will evaluate, and that's it. That's not even, the interaction is not even expansive or exploratory kind of talk, right? That really engages higher order thinking. Number 3, another consideration is that how can we design that when the learning outcome is considered, it's enhanced. It's not just about moving things online just because we don't have the manpower to see them every single week, right? So it's really about how can the blended learning approach for the redesign of the module truly enhance the learning outcome, whatever the learning outcomes are. And then, of course, student satisfaction is very key. So I'm going to show you what Miriam and others in our teaching and learning unit they've put together. So this is using Articulate Rise. What we've sought to do was that we have deck of PowerPoint slides, and these are the materials instructors would have used to teach in class the concepts of design thinking or design innovation. But instead of doing the teaching face-to-face, we moved the teaching to an online space. So using Articulate Rise, we shot a couple of videos, right? And it looks like this, and it's all integrated into the learning management system. So at one click, when students go into their learning management system, they will then see a tab where this is the package for the week before they come to class, and then they will click it, and then it will play from there. So it's very seamless, it's not cumbersome, it's not another window altogether. So all of the teaching is done online, and notice that this video, for example, you notice that it is just like 2 minutes or so. So it's nothing more than 3 minutes. Every video is not a teaching video. The video that we have is to highlight what is this lesson about and what you've done in the previous seminar, and how is that learning connected to this seminar. So the videos are not teaching videos, they're not talking heads to lecture, right? The materials are done with tools like this for students to reflect, a very simple KWL plus IQ tool for students to engage with the material. Once they've read the material, it does not necessarily mean that it's all text. They could also be infographics. It could also be YouTube videos that's embedded inside the Articulate Rise learning package with tools like this to keep them engaged, right? So even the aesthetics and the design of the space and the use of the white space in the Articulate Rise packages is looked into so that students are not overwhelmed. Pilot runs of the Articulate Rise learning packages, students may share that, oh, there's a lot. Maybe there's a lot of materials, then we might have tweaked it and to reduce some of the materials to make it really, really concise, highlighting key concepts for students to learn on their own, right? And Miriam and team, they were instrumental to add, banners like this, where there is a very simple task, go somewhere that has high traffic or human interactions, and then observe, what do you see? So activities like this are very, very important for students. And then, of course, we can't be reinventing the wheel and shooting videos after videos. And there are tons of resources there, as the module is for all students. We contextualize some of the concepts into the students' disciplines. So this video will naturally be very helpful for students in our healthcare and allied health degree programs about how empathy is crucial for patient care. Right? And some of the things that you see here inside Articulate Rise, they may well be from our teaching deck that once upon a time we use it in our seminars. But instead of teaching these in the face-to-face lessons, we bring it to the online learning package and have the students work on them first. So in this stage of the module, students are taught how to come up with a user needs statement. So they ought to have done this on their own. By the time they come to class, it is intensive, in-depth discussions about the needs statement that they have drafted. And then they will always be working collaboratively in groups for peer feedback and instructor feedback. Right? So at the end of the day, we ask ourselves, how did that experience contribute to our student learning? How did the redesign of the module from purely, I teach them when I see my students in class versus I don't have to teach them too much anymore because of the blended learning environment. And then this COI I will share with you. I think many scholars, many of you would approach. Once upon a time, Garrison proposed it for blended learning or online learning. So the presences of COI becomes a very useful tool for us to analyze whatever data that we've collected. So the social presence, the cognitive presence, and the teaching presence. Yeah, for a number of years, I've been playing with the COI framework, and many scholars are also expanding on it, and that there's not just a simple overlapping of those three spheres. It could actually be more than those three spheres. Right. So cognitive presence is really about how the design of the learning spaces, whether it is physical or online, gets to develop the higher order thinking processes. In this case, it's the creative thinking and critical thinking, and how the design of that blended learning environment, the two spaces, learning spaces, can develop cognitive skills for our students. Teaching presence is actually, if we were to study or analyze our data face-to-face and even online, naturally in face-to-face or physical settings, there will be a lot of indicators of teaching presence where the instructor will always be getting students to instructing them to work on this activity, and then now giving you feedback on this other activity. So the guiding and the supporting of the students for the implementation of the curriculum is the teaching presence, right? The facilitation and the direction. And of course, the social presence. So social presence is really about how our students interact with peers, students with the instructors. Is really about that community, that learning community that you see, whether it's face-to-face or online, so that learning will never be isolated, or learning will never be just about that individual. So the social presence here, it's very interesting. Garrison proposed a number of indicators. And for myself and team, we may be looking at other indicators that, emerge from the data that we see. What are our students doing in the online spaces? What are our students doing in our seminars that really point that, hey, there is a learning community here. Or, hey, there's none. It's all about, absorbing the concepts and then doing the task, and that's about it. There's not that community where students are socially connected to one another, or even students and instructors. There's always that maybe that hierarchy, or that power relation between the instructor and student, that social connection is not possible. I don't know, but these are the things that we think about. Right, so those three, in terms of coding references, these are Garrison's indicators where the instructor will guide students in exploration of concepts, where the instructor would integrate concepts, or social presence. Some of the indicators Garrison suggested are emotional expression, group cohesion, where you see evidence of group cohesion or open communication, and teaching presences of presence indicators, of course. Right? But I'm not showing you the full list of indicators, but maybe another time. So for this sharing, I thought I only just want to highlight the data that we collected from focus group discussion. So at the end of the trimester, we speak to the students about their experiences, and answering those two earlier research questions, we realized that these students' reported experiences highlight the dispositions that we taught in the beginning. Remember the 5C disposition? They talk about that, right? They learn how to ask the right questions. They've learned and internalized the empathy as the disposition, diving deep into emotions, seeing things from other points of view. So all these are what we would put them together as maybe examples of cognitive presence in our learning spaces. Some of them also talk about maybe the thinking skills are very explicit, right? It's intentionally bringing critical thinking tools and design thinking tools as a bag of tools for them to use as they think about the issues or the problems that they want to resolve. So these data points to the fact that, yes, our learning outcome in terms of developing our students, these transferable thinking skills are shown, that the learning has been enhanced. And these are examples of not just cognitive presence, but also teaching presence, because they would say things like, where is it, that the framework itself is appreciated by the students because it helps guide their thinking process. Right. Once upon a time, I asked students, how do you do critical thinking? And a student replied and said, thinking harder. But then they don't know how to do it. How do you do critical thinking? They don't know. Right. So when the integration of thinking skills are made explicit and visible with frameworks that the students can get guided or scaffolded with, then these presences manifest itself in the learning spaces. And here there's data to show that they were very satisfied with blended learning, right? Doesn't matter whether I watch it at the beginning or at the end. Some of them said, oh, actually it's a creative way to learn. They found my videos entertaining. And they prefer seeing the website after class, and they say that they're making the connections, and that's beautiful. So some of them watch the learning packages online before class, and then they attend face-to-face class, and then they go back to it again after class. So it's never really neat about do it first, come to class, then go online, come to class, but it's always back and forth. And I thought that was excellent. Right? They go through the content before class, and they come to class and they ask questions. And it's not just asking questions because they don't know what their content is. They are asking higher order questions. And again, I like to say that it's also because of the intentional integration of thinking skills. They've been taught to ask good questions, and we see that being demonstrated in class or online for that matter. Right, so in here, data such as this, we do see presences of cognitive teaching and social, because it says that, it's hands-on, kept us engaged in the seminar and working with others. Yes, I think I've got a few more slides there. In terms of putting the analysis together quantitatively, we're still working on that, but at the moment we're looking at this very much through qualitative lens. Right, so it was super because class time was more focused on the practical side, right? And even highlighting that instructors will then shift their focus to hands-on. They will not be wasting time, or not say wasting time, but really taking a lot of time just to teach concepts, because those are done already outside of the classroom, right? Some students highlighted that they would want more activities. They want the activities to be given more time, right? So that they have more time to ideate and prototype. So it's all about the hands-on that they want in the class when they get to work with their peers and fail fast and then iterate their design and come up with another design, right? And some of them also highlighted that, hey, facilitators were able to engage the students better, right? And this student said that he was really entertained on how the instructors are able to interact with the students a lot better. That is a social presence and teaching presence, and that's beautiful, beautiful. Perhaps just because the teaching load has been taken out of the seminars. Right? Although there are some feedback for us to consider, this one, constructive feedback, videos were good, but there's not a lot of links to the seminar. And that is telling for us, for the design team or the instructors, how can we make sure that the connections are explicit also for the assessment? If we are getting the students to think about something online, and then we come to class and we get them to do activities, and then suddenly the assignment is on something else, then something is missing, that connection is not there. So that's something that we need to look into. How can that connection with assessment be made more clearer, right? Or some students said, oh, I rarely use those resources. I only use it when there's time for submitting of assignment. Otherwise, they wouldn't usually go for that, for those resources. That has to be looked into. Why is that? So perhaps the pain points that these set of students experience about the online learning space is not experienced by others, but yet we have to tease out what that pain point is. Right. Oh, so another student said, I looked at the materials, but I still did not score very well. Of course, it's not causal. We can't quite say that it's because of this they did not score well. Perhaps the consultation with the instructor was not done extensively, or it could be there's a lot more to unpack on these feedback that we've gathered. Right, so from the Articulate Rise, I'm showing you a snippet of what the co-lead team at SIT, we're working on a prototype to build this web-based application. So Articulate Rise, just now what you saw were like videos that we shot, and then learning materials that's put in an online package, right? But there is no way for instructor to check on students' work from that website, because it is very much just providing the materials for students to engage with. But a web-based application like this, you know, where students have got tasks to work on, and then instructors can give feedback, or maybe instructors can assign their peers to give others feedback. An application like this will make all of their engagement online, yes, more with higher interactivity and higher levels of engagement. So we affectionately call it a thinking gym, because it's what we want them to do, right? The module itself is undergirded by critical design thinking skills. So the thinking gym is aimed to get the students to flex their intellectual muscles and make that thinking visible, right? So instead of happening in their heads, we want them to pull it out, put it out there for peer feedback and instructor feedback. It's still very much a MVP stage, a very basic web application, but we have grand plans to include, you know, our good friend ChatGPT and even generative AI, because in design innovation, sketching is actually quite key when the students are ideating and prototyping a solution. So if all of those tools are at the students' disposition, disposal, then we can imagine that they will really develop that creative thinking and critical thinking skills. So as a reflection, I will also invite Miriam in a little bit for us to talk about these 3 points, what it means for us. Let me just check what I have after this. All right. I think that's about it. For me, I would like to invite Miriam Woon my colleague, a senior education developer at SIT, who's been instrumental in the design of the articulate RISE learning packages to support the team, the faculty team. Miriam, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Vin and everyone. This is my last slide for reflection and discussion. I thought that you could have a chat with myself, the faculty who's experimenting with this, as well as Ms. Woon, who's the educational developer who's supporting the faculty team. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Look forward to having a chat with everyone.
Okay, excellent presentation. Thank you,
Thank you, Dr. Vin.
Nadia and Mariam. So I think it's perfect timing, 5 minutes for discussion.
Yes.
Excellent. So now, time for
yeah.
questions and comments, everyone. Any questions and comments from the audience?
Hello, sir.
Meridian, please turn your... Okay, you are unmute.
Okay. All right. Can you hear my voice? Can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Thank you for fantastic presentations. I was also teaching design thinking for the
wonderful.
master students at the master level. And then according to my experience, it was so much challenging for us as a lecturer and also for the teachers when the disaster happens. And then we have to deliver and offer the courses through the through the Zoom or through the online platforms. And then for us as a architecture lecturer and also the students, the social interactions between lecturers and also students are the most pivotal elements in the design and architecture. So my question is, what are the identified challenges in your teaching and learning process and at SIT? And then how did you and your students cope with those challenges? And then can we apply the resolutions or the proposed solutions when other disasters, probably not COVID, maybe in the next few years, there will be other viruses, and then we have to re-implement this kind of online learning. Thank you, Nadia.
Yes, thank you so much. So I think that's a big question. Challenges. I don't even know where to begin. I've got a long list in my head, but I thought you could hear from Miss Miriam Woon, if I can ask Miriam to share from your perspective, because Miriam is at the teaching and learning unit of the university, and she supports faculty like all of us trying to pivot to emergency remote teaching all of a sudden. And I'm sure from her perspective, there are challenges as well. Miriam, anything comes to your mind?
Well, I'll try my best to answer. You probably have another view as well. With regard to this flipped learning that we have for UDE 1001, I think it's also a concern that's brought up by a lot of faculty is that, and you've also seen from Nadia's slides that students may not enter or they don't view the materials in time. I think that's one huge challenge, because if they are not used to this way of learning, and it is not, I don't know how to say this, they don't stick to what the structure is like, they may miss out a bit when it comes to class, because what they're supposed to do in class is to apply the concepts that they have learned. So this is a bit of a challenge, which will result in faculty reteaching. So, and may not be very efficient use of time. So this is one of the bigger challenges that we have with regard to blended learning in general. Nadya, what do you think?
Yes, I was thinking about our 3 reflection points here. One huge challenge I will feel like as if, in faculty will feel like there's so much to do. Like, how do I suddenly pivot and engage my students online other than just releasing my voice over lecture? Right? Or if I want to shorten it, if I want to come up with a video that can animate something that I would typically draw in class, that also takes a bit of tech skills. So the feeling of being overwhelmed with the sudden move to a different learning space, I think it highlights the first point that we put together there, that we really have to collaborate.
Yeah, that's where my unit comes in and works with you.
That's right. Yeah. So the collaboration between faculty as well as with educational developers, like the unit, like teaching and learning unit, will be critical, so that each faculty do not feel like as if it's a tall task, right? A tall order to do this. And then the other challenge I was thinking about is that many of us may always think that it is just a matter of a modality. If it's not face-to-face, I just convert it online. So I realized that it's never really just about the online or offline. It's actually that community of learners will still have to have that social construction of like everybody learning together, and that will enhance learning outcomes. It's easier said than done, and I've tried it in many different ways. Getting the students to go on forums, getting the students to do reflections, but not text, but with their phones. I get the students to do critical reflections, but recording themselves. The students are recording videos for TikTok anyway, so I thought that they could do critical reflection with videos too. Yes. And then you notice one of the students put this comment that the videos by the profs are entertaining. I realized that I could also play a part to get them to come online. If I can be myself and be human and not take 10 takes to give a perfect video, I could just be myself, and that is enough to get students to come online and see how I fumble with my work. So that community of learners is the social presence that of Garrison's community of inquiry framework. For me, I stretched it a little bit. It's not just about interaction, but it's about how I connect with my students to get them to come online or to get them to do. And then the last point there, I've mentioned it just now. The challenge is that, I think Miriam mentioned as well, when we have things online, we forget to bring it into class. So students will always feel like as if I watch the online package, that's done. And then I come to class and then I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to bring what I've learned or looked at into this class. Oh, I didn't know that. And it's sometimes also not through the fault of the students, is because instructors are not teaching the learning together. The connection between the learning that the students do online is not linked to the physical classroom. Which is why Miriam said that faculty goes to her unit to do videos and then come to class to teach that again, or even to open the website in class and to teach it from that website.
I think you can bring in your KWL IQ. That's where we try to engage our students online as they view the online materials. So they are supposed to reflect on what they have learned online. And then when they come to class, they're supposed to review and apply.
We've talked a lot, Dr. Meridian. You want to share what about your experiences? We could learn from your experience.
Well, well, I'm a new learner, to be honest. But in terms of the design thinking module that I have taught before I came to Brunei. When the disaster hit, it was not COVID-19, but there was a earthquake happened in this region. And then what I've learned is that the design thinking modules become so much decentralized. That means that previously the students are learning from the lecturers, and then we have undertaken the learning and teaching um, in person in the classroom. But then when the disaster hit, and then we can just let everything go, which means that, okay, we can just give the students the ebook, the PDF formatted modules, and then, okay, this is the task that the students must complete within within 6 months period. Okay, but then but in the same way, the lecturer, it was also experiencing sort of like trauma. So we cannot go to the classroom just even to develop or innovate the curriculum. And at that time, we didn't have any uh, like technical assistant who are sort of focusing on monitoring and developing and innovating the curriculum. So we can just let everything on the student side. So we let the student side. We let the student decide what they want to achieve within the 6 months period. So 6 months mean the one semester, right? And so that's why we call it as a decentralized learning and teaching. So so we changed the center of learning. So before the disaster, it was the lecturer who become the center of learning. Because when we talk about the design, about the architecture, learning process, the lecturer must give them a clear example in person in the classroom. But when we are under certain circumstances, and then face-to-face meeting was not allowed, then we can just give them like, okay, this is the list of tasks that you need to finish within 6 months. And then number two, I learned that we shift into the constructive learning. The constructive is not the negative term, reflecting the way we learn, but the constructive means that, okay, now we have to create and we have to modify the modules, the curriculum, and also the learning outcomes that are set by the university level and approved by the senior management. And then with the student, we approve that, okay, can we move away from that sort of that pattern, and then we can create the learning and teaching system that are convenient for us, lecturers, and also the students. And yeah, so that's all my experiences, and, and now I'm still learning and also measuring and monitoring whether such concepts of practice in the design learning can be practiced in the near future. And then now I'm also supervising one MA student, and she is doing a research on the design thinking for the Bruneian gamers. And her background is architecture. And then she has completed around like 20 interviews. But out of surprise, all of the interviews were done online via Zoom. And some of the rest of the interview were done via Microsoft Teams. And then I asked the student, so actually your background is architecture. And you learn how to design everything in person. And now you have to check whether the game design is profitable, is acceptable, and marketable. In a nutshell, she's doing a user experiences, the user X. And then in the user X modules, the designer must do the interview in person, yeah, with the users, with the game creators and everything. So that's the standard formula in doing and undertaking research on the user experiences. But then the students right now must do the interview, even the focus group discussions online. So, and then she told me, actually, it's fine, sir, because we are now moving to a new habitats. We are now moving into a new normal when the architecture, user experiences, research are no longer doable and feasible through the direct interactions with the users and also game creations. So, so this pandemic has actually transitions and transform the architecture student, the design students to think forward in order to create new innovation for their learning. And I think your presentations has reflected what I have done so far. So yeah, thank you so much. That's all.
Thank you. So thank you. I'll
Excellent.
hand over to Dr. Vin. I know that we're behind time, but I just
fascinating.
want
A
to
lot
acknowledge.
of interest in the topic. I can see a lot of interest in the topic, and I think if you can have 1 more hour, that's be great. Lots of interest in the topic, and it's so fascinating. Thank you so much, Nadya.
Thank you.
Maria and Marian for
Dr.
your contributed ideas. I think that's excellent. But now it's time for the next speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce Ali Ahmad and Dr. Masitah Sharon from Brunei. So as you can see in the abstract booklet, probably allow me to introduce them by briefly reading aloud there. Fascinating professor. So Ali Ahmad is interested in exploring the teaching and learning of thinking skills in the Malay language subjects such as creative, problem solving, scientific thinking through STEM, and wisdom pedagogy. Currently, Ali Ahmad serves as a consultant for the Malay language literacy standard project at the Ministry of Education in Brunei Darussalam. And Dr. Masitah's research interest lie in teacher and teacher education, mathematics education, higher education, 21st century teaching and learning, school-based assessment, classroom research, and shadow education. Her current research areas are exploring shadow education in the subject of mathematics in Brunei Darussalam, connecting visual representations such as concept teaching and learning of mathematics, and designing and implementing quiz-like problems in the mathematics classroom. Now, over to you, Ali Ahmad and Masitah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Vin. Can I kindly request, please, Dr. Meridian, can you unmute yourself? Sorry, but thank you. Thank you. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to the Muslim colleagues joining us here today, and good afternoon to everyone else, and as well to the others as well. Yeah. So this is a presentation on higher education staff perspectives on post-pandemic teaching and learning. The expectations from one of the university in Brunei Darussalam, where Dr. Ali Ahmad and myself are based. So we come from the Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah Institute of Education, one of the faculties, the Faculty of Education at the university. So let me begin by saying that there has been a plethora of literature coming out from the pandemic itself, where from all these literature, they have also predicted and examined the future of higher education in the post-pandemic era from the perspectives, not just from the perspectives of the academic staff, but from other university leaders, the staff, and also students. So these researchers selected literature that we've put here. For example, Rusley and colleagues, Ratan, Robson et al., based from the post-pandemic stage, whereas Rudolph came from during the pandemic stage. So they've they've agreed that they've investigated a lot of the what happened during the pandemic and also during the post-pandemic stage. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were a lot of unknown and uncertainties on what it looked like in the future, similarly during the endemic stage and the current stage. And thus, disruptions brought on by the pandemic have influenced the way staff perceive teaching and learning in higher education, and this resulted in new expectations for the future. While some studies may suggest a return to the pre-pandemic lecture modes, others point towards a more hybrid and technology-enabled approaches. Next slide. So from the perspective of the researchers, we question, how do academic staff perceive teaching and learning in higher education in the post-pandemic era? So this came about early last year, when we thought of, we have to think about the future and what we can study about. Thank you. Next. So the overarching aim of our study is to investigate the expectations of University Brunei Darussalam academic staff for post-pandemic higher education, as informed by their experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, next. But first and foremost, we would like to acknowledge the research team members, Dr. Marliza and Dr. Nur Hidayah. Dr. Marliza is the principal investigator of this faculty level research, and Dr. Siti Nur Hidayah is the co-PI. They are tasked in doing the well-being part of the research, and they've presented in webinar 2 last week on Wednesday, and the recording has been uploaded in the Australia-ASEAN Forum YouTube channel as well. Similarly, for Dr. Nur Hardimah and Dr. Nordiana's presentation during webinar 7 yesterday. So these two ladies looked at professional practices, whereas for Dr. Aliama and myself, we looked at teaching and learning perspective for the research and from the data that we collected. We would also like to acknowledge our research assistant, Mr. Azmi Said, for his invaluable tasks in helping us with the scoping review and all the transcribing tasks as well. Thank you. Just a very brief overview about Brunei, just in case for those who are not familiar where Brunei is located. And I think we have to reiterate again that Brunei is right in the middle of the ASEAN country. Okay, it's about 2 hours flight from Singapore, Malaysia, and about 2.5 hours from Jakarta. So the capital city is Bandar Seri Begawan. The population is less than 500,000. Our official language is Bahasa Melayu, but English is widely spoken, and it's also the medium of instruction across the national education system. Islam is our official religion, and there are other religions as well that are practiced in Brunei. The main export is oil and gas. Just to give a bold point about the currency rate in Brunei. For example, $1 is about 75 cents US, or $1 is about $1.34. And for the context of Australia, $1 Australian is about 91 cents. So it may fluctuate, so we don't know, but this is just estimation. Huh? Okay, thank you. Next is. All right, just to give information about the higher education institutions in Brunei, officially there are 7 institutions of higher learning. So there are 3 universities, 1 university college, 1 polytechnic, and 2 private colleges in Brunei. But one of the institutions, Polytechnic Brunei, offers diploma and not degrees, so it belongs more or less towards the technical and vocational education and training sector. So this is just an overview about the population of the staff and students and when it was established. So in the context of our study, the research site, it's University Brunei Darussalam. So we started in 1985. Okay, thank you. And also for this table, this was taken from a table that was published in a chapter back in 2021. This is about the mode of teaching and learning, mode of teaching, delivery, and assessment during the COVID-19 pandemic. So during the initial start of the COVID-19 pandemic back in March 2020 in Brunei, although most of the higher education institutions remained open and essential services continued, their mode of teaching, delivery, and assessment varied from one HEI to the next. So based on this information, you can see the different start date of when we immediately transition to the online mode of learning itself. So in the context of University Brunei Darussalam, we started 12th of March 2020, and we're very lucky because we already have our learning management system, which is Canvas, already put in place a few years prior to the start of the pandemic itself. So it is hoped that all these disruptive shifts in the way we adopt and adapt to a new way of teaching and learning will provide the most and best effective approaches to educate future generations beyond this pandemic. So this is what we stated back in 2021, based on the chapter that was published. Okay, thank you. So again, just to give the context of the University Brunei Darussalam, it is about 15 minutes drive from the capital city of Bandar Seri Begawan. The building itself is located along the coastal highway of the Borneo Island. And we do share the land with our neighbor university, University Technology Brunei. So these two universities are just next to each other, and it does overlook the South China Sea. So it's along the beach area, separated, of course, by the highway, and it's such a beautiful campus with the breeze from the beach that goes to the campus itself. Thank you. And also in the context of University Brunei Darussalam, the medium of instruction we provide is English, mainly English. There are also Malay modules that are being taught. There are 9 academic faculties, 7 research institutes, and the support center is the language center that offers the compulsory module for all our undergraduate students in the university. Thank you. I'll pass this on to Dr. Ali Ahmad about and where we can start talking about the gist of the presentation, which is the study. Over to you.
Thank you, Associate Professor Masitah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everybody. So this study was conducted last year when we had just entered the pre-endemic stage of the COVID-19. So as mentioned earlier, the study aims to explore the UBD academic staff's expectations for post-pandemic higher education. And we hope that the data is informed by their pandemic experiences when we had the lockdown and when we had to learn new online teaching tools. So with this study, the objective is to identify few expectations and perhaps to propose a way forward for addressing these expectations. The research employed a mixed method design. So we had administered a survey to all teaching staff at UBD, but only 38 respondents answered the survey. And after the survey phase, 10 participants volunteered to be interviewed, and so that our research assistants contacted the 10 participants and discussed their experience and expectations in depth as compared to the survey. So out of the 38, 59% are female, and majority of the respondents has joined UBD for more than 10 years. So one of the first questions that we ask about the perspective of how would teaching and learning be after the pandemic would be, what are you looking forward to about returning to campus? So as you can see, 73 out of the 38 participants are really eager to see friends, to meet with colleagues, teammates, and of course the students. And 65% of these respondents, they said that they are looking forward to more easier collaboration with co-workers and students. They also expect to have a better work and life balance, perhaps after the lockdown. And one of the things that they also choose is to have more training programs and courses in person. As predicted, the participants were eager to work from campus. So this survey was administered, as mentioned, at the early stage of the pre-endemic phase in Brunei. To give you a context, at that time, not everybody were very confident to go to the campus or to meet with others, but they predicted, or they want to have more experience in working in the campus. Also, you can see that the staff are looking forward to have face-to-face classes with the students. The pandemic also some sort of condition everybody that online learning will not go away easily. So they would see that even during the early endemic stage and beyond, hybrid teaching and learning will increase. There are a few things that were asked when it comes to the use of online teaching and learning tools. The first three are shown here. Again, there is a pattern that even though staff are looking forward to go back to campus, they positively see that the use of online learning will either be at the same level while we have a lockdown, or to increase during the endemic stage. Another data shows that the use of LMS provided by UBD will also either be at the same level and also to increase. Similarly, the use of free online learning tools such as some people subscribe to the free Zoom and Google Meet. Also, the respondents thought that the use of open educational resources, mainly to do some references, to access references, will also either to continue as it was or to increase. Again, I think the pandemic forces us to communicate with students by the use of digital communication infrastructure. So this also they predict also to continue. Another thing that we ask is about high flex teaching and learning mode. Most would believe that it will continue as the same, similar to what they had, and and also to increase. Some academic staff also use other form of LMS, which are not provided by UBD. And from this research, we found out that some of them might want to continue using them. And one example of LMS that are not provided by UBD is Google Classroom. And another thing that is slightly different, even though most would say it would be at the same level or to retain, but 27% of the respondents would see that they will discontinue to use self-paid online learning tools. In terms of training, as mentioned in the abstract, the academic staff expects to have more training and capacity building courses to be given to them, or they might want to seek on their own capacity building and training with regards to online teaching pedagogies and also the use of technologies. Lastly, from me, 37% plus 39% of the respondents would see that virtual exchanges and collaborative online learning with other university partners would either be the same or to increase after the pandemic. Over to you, Prof. Masitah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Liamat. So as Dr. Liamat was conveying earlier, we did interview 10 participants that comprised of associate professors, senior assistant professors, and 3 lecturers. And this was conducted back in September and October of last year. Okay. And from the interview findings, so this is from the preliminary analysis that we did. So we looked at the aspects of teaching and learning. So we wanted to see what did the respondents, their views in regards to blended learning and on-campus teaching and learning experiences. So for example, just to highlight here, respondent M1, personally, he preferred the teaching to be in person, which is face-to-face. And there are others as well, the female respondents who stated the various aspects of teaching and learning. And overall, most of them do express their satisfaction on the blended learning and experiences finally allowed, when we are finally allowed to be on campus. Some also express putting their students' preference of teaching online and or offline, and because they looked at their students' views as well, and they would want to give that preference in terms of their teaching, so that there would be more engagement and more interactions during the on-campus experience as well. Back in 20, just to give a short story here. Back in 2020, I would say about 2 months after the start of the COVID-19, the university did conduct an online survey after the online teaching and learning implementation, because the university felt that it was important to obtain feedback from the academic staff and students and to understand and learn from the experiences. So we collected about 187 faculty members and about 1,500 students' responses. So, and this, the findings were published back in 2021, and we stated that these extraordinary circumstances, which is the effects of the COVID-19, will leave lasting changes to the way we think and strategize education, And we will observe new norms in higher education, and the typical model of classroom-based may no longer be viable for the university to maintain. And moving forward and beyond the pandemic, when we stated that back in 2021, this resonates with the findings that we collected during the post-pandemic or the endemic stage. And we also stated that to improve teaching and learning more should be done to optimize online resources and transition to digital platforms. So we did state already back in 2021 that online education will continue to advance, and as these will use as the use of disruptive technology. So these are the insights that we predicted from in the context of Brunei on what is happening, what will happen during the post-pandemic stage and perhaps after the post-pandemic stage as well. Okay. Thank you. Next slide, please. So in terms of the study that was conducted by Robson and colleagues, that this was during the post-pandemic, where they investigated participants that came from 36 UK higher education institutions on how the post-pandemic lecture COVID-19 will look like. And they stated that from the context of the UK, staff expectations of post-pandemic lectures suggested that the majority felt that they would not return to the conventional learning. Instead, lectures would typically become more interactive. Again, this resonates with our findings as well, where the increased use of blended learning has been shown to improve retention, engagement, and achievement, and it may also increase widening participation. Next is, we'll also look at the staff development programs utilizing educational technologies, where the participants, some quotes here which are reflected on the need for ongoing training so that they can adapt and utilize technology in their teachings. For example, F7, she acknowledged that there were trainings that were conducted during the pandemic, and she acknowledged that the center also offered some work training programs as well to help our staff to transition to the online learning. And they would also, well, most of the participants from the interview, they expressed their willingness as well to join any trainings that will that utilizes technology, because this will definitely help them in terms of their teaching and learning during the endemic stage. So based on the literature that we found by Erringfield and Ratton, educators have been increasing their focus on digital literacy to survive the COVID-19 pandemic. And these included, they mentioned as well, training courses on how to use the benefit, how to use and benefit from the digital resources. So again, our findings from our preliminary analysis that do resonate with previous literature as well. Thank you. These are just some of the tools that were conveyed to us during the interview, and this has been categorized by using traditional platforms, online platforms, LMS, and online teaching and learning apps. So these are the several different kinds of teaching and learning tools that were used during the post-pandemic stage, and perhaps this will be similar as well to other universities, but just to highlight as well that these are I'm sure there are other tools that are being used outside of the study, but we're just highlighting the tools that are used here. So one of the participants, sorry, one of the participants mentioned about the use of live streaming through YouTube. So that is quite advanced in terms of the use of the teaching and learning tool, because personally, I seldom do I hear that happening in the context of the university. But other tools, yes, we hear that often by our colleagues in the university. We do use a lot of WhatsApp and Telegram as well for the online teaching and learning apps. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Prof. So as a conclusion, this study revealed that UBD academic staffs express enthusiasm for various aspects of teaching and learning, especially in the higher education in the post-pandemic era. Research participants favor blended learning approaches and a strong desire for more on-campus teaching and learning experience. So it means that even though they wanted to go back to campus, but they don't. But they decided they feel that they need to still be using technology to communicate with students, to do online and high flex teaching and learning. And finally, how do we facilitate this desire? It's in the form of one of the ways is in the form of providing more staff development programs and to reflect the need for ongoing professional development to effectively adapt the changing landscape of higher education. So just an example, previously supervision meeting or teaching and learning involving a few students. Previously, we would need them to go to campus and for them to have face-to-face classes. But from the pandemic, after the pandemic, most of us would either ask the student first whether they want to have it online or if they are okay to go to the campus. Why? Because COVID-19 is still here. Most of cases, even though they are not that severe as previously, but most students now and staff are more committed towards teaching and learning, especially with the help of technology. I think that's it from us. We welcome your questions or comments or any feedback that you want to share with us. Over to you, Dr. Vin.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Masitah and Dr. Ali Ahmad, for the really fascinating and informative presentation. I love all the maps that you show, Masitah, showing the position of Brunei in Southeast Asia. I'm not sure, but I was a big fan myself. So it's really helpful to say it's between Singapore and the Philippines. So it's really near here, halfway. Yes, from Singapore to Brunei, and also the map showing your university, the distance between the capital city and your university. So I love all the figures and the finding really interesting as well. Okay, so now over to our participant. I'm really impressed with the number of participants on a Friday afternoon. Really high number of participants this afternoon. So thank you so much, everyone. And please kindly give comments and or ask questions.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to thank. I see familiar names. A lot of them are from UBD itself. Thank you very much for your for joining us this afternoon.
We have great support there.
Yeah,
Meridian.
Yes, Meridian, unmute.
Yes. All right. So I have unmuted ready. Okay. After we survived the pandemic for around like 6 semesters, I decided to volunteer myself to teach for the TLC, University Brunei Darussalam. So we have UBD has a fantastic teaching and learning center, TLC, for the lecturer, professors, associate professor to update and advance their learning and teaching methods. So I did 3 experiments. The first experiment was my training and workshop was conducted face-to-face, right? And there were only 15 lecturers turned up in my classroom. And then in my second training, I did the same way, and only 11 lecturers turned up in the workshop. But in the third training, I did it online, facilitated by the TLC. And out of my surprise, there were around 45 to 40 lecturers turned up during the online learning. So my objective back then was to regain the social interactions that we have missed during the pandemic, right? Because all of us were working conveniently at home and also embracing with our works through the laptop and joining so many online forums. But it seems to me that after in the post-COVID-19, we've been sort of well habituated, and we are very, very much enjoying living in online platforms. And then my training and my workshop was to regain and to allow lecturers to enjoy the traditional learning, because we want to evaluate how emotional bondings can be developed and established through direct interactions with the fellow lecturers. That's number one. And then number two, from what I've learned, that I think in the global survey, lecturers during the pandemic have experienced sort of like anxiety because of loneliness, because they have been away from their students and their colleagues. And then my learning was like to allow them actually re-experience the physical space-based interactions with their colleagues. And I would like to know from the Professor Masitah perspective, and also from the Dr. Ali Ahmad's perspective. Even though we, as a lecturers, have experienced anxiety, and we are more into face-to-face learning and teaching, but why the majority of the lecturers are more enjoying online workshop rather than face-to-face workshop? That's number one, yeah. And then number two, what are the incentives that we can give to the lecturers so that they can be more well motivated to enjoy the face-to-face workshop rather than the online workshop? Because right now, in Southeast Asian countries, not necessarily in Brunei, everyone has been in the new norms, right? So COVID-19 is no longer foreign to us, it's no longer scary to us, and everyone can enjoy the face-to-face learning. So how can we re-embrace the face-to-face workshop or learning and teaching training for all of the lecturers? And I was thinking maybe we can get or we can give them like $10
No.
coffee bean tin. But yeah, it's really costly, you know. It's an incentive, but it's really costly for the trainer. So I'm now still pondering what's kind of the best incentive that we can give to lecturers so that they can voluntarily come to the workshop and training with exact money. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Meridian. I'll answer your first question, why staff like to go online for the online workshops. Based on my observation, it's just sort of like a lecture. You don't have to switch on your camera unless the facilitator engages or mention your name. I've had that happen to me, and I have to answer in order to participate and to engage during the online workshop. So I guess maybe that's one of the reason. But then online as well is very convenient. You can be anywhere and you can attend the online workshops and still gain a lot of information that you may or may not been given along the way. So your second, my response may be different from Dr. Liaman. I'll give him a chance later to respond. The second question in regards to the incentives for face-to-face workshops, what to give, I disagree with giving the money because where are we going to get that funding, first and foremost? But in the context of UBD, from the Office of Assistant Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs and the Teaching and Learning Center, they do have the point system because we do collect that every year. So it is one of the ways for our career progression, where the management will look at the points that we've collected over the years in attending our UBD the workshops that were offered by the university itself. So they have those incentives put in place already. SUP, I forgot what it stands for, but it's one of the point system as well. So apart from that, the kinds of incentives, sometimes it helps to market yourself, or you have friends around in the campus and just shoot them all the WhatsApp invites through WhatsApp or emails as well. I'm sure they'll be willing to register. And it does take a lot of effort and time, though, in order to build that connection, to build that network around campus as well. So my advice is make yourself known, Meridian, to the university community. You're getting famous now, so perhaps our colleagues here from the education faculty now know you as well. So they may be interested to join any workshops that you may offer, and also our colleagues from the university. Thank you. Dr. Liamat, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you that online courses from the TLC, technology, is it?
Teaching and Learning Center.
What's TLC stand for? Technology.
Teaching and Learning Center.
Teaching and Learning Center.
Yeah.
I think it is more convenient to have it online. But when you mentioned, Dr. Meridian, when you mentioned that the number of participants were about 15 or 11 in your second session, I think it is almost the same numbers, if I remember correctly, when I conducted a few workshops, especially on Canvas, before the pandemic. So the attendance was not that big, unless it is compulsory to, if we say that each faculty has to send in a few people, and then it will be bigger as more than 15. For the incentives, I think one more for the face-to-face seminars or courses. I think when we started working on Fridays this year, we had faculty seminars on Friday afternoon. And usually we have more people coming in to the seminars, as because first, it is on Friday afternoon, so there are no school runs. Secondly, it's because we open up not just to staff, but also to in-service students. So they have the time and they are willing to come to the campus on Friday afternoon. With regards to incentives, I think no incentive will be enough for everybody. Even SUP, we had SUP back, I think in the last 5 years. I would say that I'm not a fan of this incentives, because it forces everybody just to attend but not to learn, where they want to collect certificates but not to apply it in their teaching. Yeah, that's my personal point of view. But again, how do we incentivize by not using money? I think it's as you mentioned, the facilitator has to be welcoming, or maybe it's the personality of the facilitator that might invite more participants in the future. Another thing that might want to attract more people coming into the courses, face-to-face courses, is, I would believe, in the campus facilities and logistics. In Shibi, I personally propose a few rooms to be upgraded into hybrid online and hybrid learning spaces. But again, yeah, as mentioned by Prof. Masitah, it goes back to the provisions of technologies that we have. I think that's all from me. I can talk more about this, but it might not be good to hear.
Excellent. Thanks so much, everyone. It's just fascinating. I think we just continue this conversation forever. So fascinating just to meet and talk and share the ideas with each other. I think that's just wonderful. Oh, and I can't believe that final webinar. I still wish to see you and talk with you and hear about your research. Okay. Okay, thanks so much again, Dr. Masitah Sharil and Dr. Ali Ahmad Ali, for sharing your insights about your online teaching in your context. And I think we have lots today. And on behalf of the committee, I would like to extend my thanks to all my coaches, wonderful partners, and all fantastic presenters and participants over the past 2 weeks for your enthusiasm, contribution, and support for this program. And I just wish you all the best with your endeavors, with your teaching research, and I'm sure we will meet again soon. So please keep in touch. And if you want to share anything by using the Google mailing list, please do. I encourage knowledge sharing through the mailing list. If you want to share any resources relevant to online learning and teaching, blended learning, any innovative ideas, please do. So we keep the conversation going, and don't feel that this is the end of this year. Please keep it going through the email list. And if anyone had great enthusiasm for the rest of the year and want to volunteer to do some seminars in September, please put your hand up and do it and become the lead, just like myself or Masitah already did. We done our part. If any of you would like to do that, please, I'm very happy to discuss and let you take the lead to convene your program. So you're very welcome to contribute to this forum. So I would invite, and I will make that clear in my new lesson next week. So have a great weekend, everyone, and enjoy your time until we next meet.
Bye.
Going to meet partners.
Have a good weekend. Thanks, Dr. Ahmad. Thank you very much. My partner, my research partner in crime. Thank you, Dr. Meridian.
Thank you, Prof. Masitah.